All right, so I'm switching over to XBI from LABU. I think it's an easier chart to follow. Um, I'm going to show you guys the power of divergences, I guess. I recently started talking about them in my videos, and I didn't really explain why I think they're so relevant in trading. But basically, once you've identified a pattern, you want to find divergences to support that. And it's one thing to identify a divergence on the 5 minute or the 1 hour, but I found a bunch here on XBI on the daily, which is much more significant than on the hour or anything less. But essentially, so over here, let's look at some major divergences here. So we have a rising wedge here. We can see this long-term steady upwards trend line, and this stock would have been completely fine if it would have stayed in this parallel channel. However, started making this higher leg up, starting a new channel, which is usually hard to maintain. We see it tried to pop here, it lost it, and it retested here at the apex. It's a pretty nice looking wedge here, but the divergences are pretty huge, and they are like multi-month divergences. And first one is right here, low and a higher low, and we have a low and a lower low. This is a bearish divergence. Up here on the RSI, we've got a even longer divergence from this head to this head in the RSI. If I can zoom in here a little bit, we can see that this is the high where the RSI was at its highest, and it's only moved down ever since then. And if it came into effect here at the peak, this is when the divergence finally took root, and it was further supported by this hidden divergence right here. Same concept. We've got a low and a lower low, and the price makes a low and a higher low, which is a divergence. So this is going back to 2015, and just spotting a couple divergences and showing how they don't take root right away, but they are still relevant in the long-term trend of a stock. Then we had this big head and shoulders right here that came down. Anyways, I wanted to come back into the present day and look at some bearish divergences that I see for biotech. I know everybody's been going wild over biotech. I guess I'm not so much. I think that this might be the last hoorah. I guess I'm bearish on biotech. I'm kind of going out on a leg by this because the price action has been very choppy and it's hard to identify any long-term patterns. However, okay, so this is a telltale sign. When the stochastic is low like this and it dips below this line here, and then the next one is sitting on the line or above it. So this arrow is pointed upwards, but price moves downwards. That's a small divergence, and you can see it kind of coincided with this larger move up. We've got another one, same exact thing, dips below, comes up, touches above, price moves lower. Let's look at some divergence right here on the bottom again, sticking with the stochastic. Same deal, we've got a low that dips below this line, and then the next one is above it. Yet price trends downwards still, it's followed by a nice pop. Sticking with this right here, we see that we have this rounded top, and the following stochastics are progressively lower. Price is progressively higher. How about this one right here? This is a long one. You see this going from a low to a higher low in price, and on the RSI, it goes from sitting at 50 to below 50, and this is a long 2-month-long divergence, which I think is fairly significant, and it's followed again by, you can almost call this a continuation, but this is below 50 and even lower below 50 on the RSI, and price continues to move up ever so slightly, but it is there. Finally, recently here, we've got price making a high and then a higher high, but the stochastic is making a high and a lower high. Again, these things just can't coincide. If you don't believe in divergences, I mean, I just explained over here how they're significant in the grand scheme of things. I could understand why it's hard to rationalize without seeing the follow-through after them, but longer-term daily divergences are the real deal. And I've got my most significant one here with this RSI coinciding right here with the highest RSI level, and it's been moving downwards ever since and has never broken above this orange line, while price continues to make this huge move up. This is how long is this divergence? This is a 7-month long divergence, and that is very significant, and it's followed up with this second major divergence, I found two major divergences and a bunch of medium-term divergences outlined in orange and light blue. So the stochastic here makes a low, and then a lower low, and then a lower low again. And you can see that price makes a high, and then a higher high. So look at the orange lines here, and then look at the orange lines here. There's one major one, and then one minor one right here on the underside. And we see we have one major one and one minor one right here. Now I'm going to go from the daily to the 2 hour to show the pattern that I'm seeing again. And it is a rising wedge. So rising wedges have a 9-wave pattern to them. And I'll count the first one out. We have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 right at the apex. And over here on the second wedge, I have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 right up here by the apex. So I expect a continuation. I expect XBI to move up to near $74. So that's a pretty solid gain there. And I expect it to be kind of a straight shot, just like this was over here on our first rising wedge in the pattern. But then in the grander scheme of things, I expect this to fall very fast and hard. You see at the top of these rising wedges that they fall very quickly. Let's go back to the first rising wedge. Actually, here's like a perfect example of one, and I'm not sure if my lines are totally correct. I'm skeptical on this bottom line. I'm pretty sure on this first one that's a legitimate rising wedge, but on the second one, this red line could be more horizontal. But the imagery still stands, I guess. So we have this big leg down, which is important. So we have this leg down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The reason I'm hesitating is this might be closer to breakdown than I think. So it could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and this was the last leg up to retouch an apex, and we could be just like breaking down right now, which very well could be the case. Either way, I think short term, it's hard to say. We've ran up so much after falling, and there's some major divergences that I could see the momentum trade carrying into the next few trading days until we reach 74 on the lines I've drawn here, or if it's the latter case where this was the last ditch effort to hit the apex, then we could just be ready to waterfall, I guess. Really hate to be bearish on biotech, but it's just what I'm seeing right now. If you look at the long-term chart, there's like 0 patterns here that you can identify. I mean, this is a major resistance zone, and this is a major support zone. And just by saying that, it's an ascending triangle, which is pretty bullish. But ascending triangles need to touch both sides in an equidistant fashion, and there's just way too much white space in here for any technical analysis to take place. I mean, it's a rule of thumb that it needs to rotate from side to side, to side to side to side, and fill all the white space available. And just looking longer term here, it's not doing that at all. You can just see all the white space here, as well as all the divergences. I went through thoroughly here on the daily and tried to look for some. And in the beginning, I saw a bullish divergence, and as soon as we got up here, I saw this massive one, followed by this second huge warning sign. And then after that, after this point, I only see bearish divergences. And yeah, so that's my analysis on biotech.